Kieron, I'm fascinated by people's earliest engineering memory. What got them into it? So what's yours? What's kind of your earliest point when you can remember engineering being a thing for you?
Well, I guess like a lot of people, sort of say those moments where you were taking things apart, putting them back together, and I always played with Lego, for example,
Okay.
right at the very, very beginning. I remember that probably is my earliest memory is having a lot of Lego and a lot of what's called at the time technical Lego, which was the one that had all the gears and the motors and you could build cool stuff from. So it was definitely encouraged to have a lot of that kind of building stuff around. And then I moved on to sort of mechano and electrical stuff, and then later on in life moved to taking cars apart and building those. But I guess my earliest vehicle creation was probably a sort of go-kart, soapbox go-kart, the wooden one with the bits of rope that you use for steering, and that was probably my earliest vehicle that I built.
Okay. And did you have family, be it parents, grandparents, that influenced that, or was that kind of natural for you just to be inquisitive about that?
I guess as a family, my father was an engineer. He was an electrical engineer, and so I always was aware of engineering as a career, and had seen what he'd done. But back in the day, there was a big competition between electrical engineers and mechanical engineers, and I was much more biased towards mechanical engineering than electrical. In fact, I've really struggled to come to terms with electrical. I couldn't understand quite how it worked, and I remember having lots and lots of battles with my father about which was best, mechanical or electrical. He was a member of the IEE, I was a member of the IMechE, and now of course today's world, mechanical and electrical engineering have really converged. And my earliest race car memory that I worked on was the only electronics on it was a battery and perhaps the fuel injection systems. And then maybe some data acquisition, but now we can't get without software and electrical, and so they've really converged.
Okay. And how did you find school? Were you a natural academic, or did you lean towards more practical subjects?
Well, I mean, to be an engineer, you've got to be good at maths. I mean, that's really a given. Maths is very much the foundation of engineering. I'm not very good at maths. I really struggle with maths, and and I don't know actually whether that's really as true a statement as I believe it to be. I think actually I just found it difficult to learn maths, and probably the way it was taught at school, I struggled. But clearly I'm an engineer now, and I've got a degree in engineering, so I've managed to cope with the maths bit. But am I a natural academic? No, I'm not a natural academic in that respect. I'm much more geared to the practical side of it, and I love designing and building and then the testing. I'm probably a bit less of an analytical engineer and academic engineer in that respect. But
it's interesting you say about the teaching and the maths and difficult term. Was that from not having a relevance? Maybe if it had been taught around
contextual,
use in automotive or the real world rather than theory, maybe.
I'm a strong believer of that. It's teaching and learning. Full stop is about wanting to be able to consume the information that you're being given, and to make that consumable, you've got to make it interesting. It's a bit like putting sugar on your cereal. You need to make it nice to eat. And I think at school I found it quite difficult actually, because it was purely an academic driven kind of learn this to pass your exams type of thing. And once I actually started to put that into context of doing something that I wanted to achieve with it, it made more sense. Yeah. But at school I really struggled, and we had O-levels and GCSEs in the 80s, not these GCSEs that we've got now. And I was streamed within my school to do the CSEs because they were the lower, easier to achieve grades. I then had to actually be put through and do O-levels separately, so I had two sets of exams I had to do just because the school had chosen to stream us that way. And I really think that's a disadvantage for children, and I actually prefer the system that we got now, where everyone sits the same exams. But I do believe you need to be interested in learning, and certainly when I was at school, that wasn't really a big objective, getting people to be interested in learning.
Okay. And was university, obviously you went to Oxford Brookes, was that always the route for you? Did you look at apprenticeships?
Oxford Poly, not Oxford Brookes. So when I graduated, I did my O-levels and CSEs and really sort of. I was quite successful in the grades of that respect. So I got my O-levels that I needed to achieve to go and do A-levels, and I chose rather foolishly in hindsight to do A-levels next. And so I did physics, chemistry and maths, and I spectacularly failed. I got 2 E's and a U in those subjects. And actually, again, they're foundations of engineering, those sort of sciences, and I should have really been able to to do them quite well. So I failed my A-levels, and as a result, that precluded me from going to university and doing a degree, which was my next chosen route. So I was given the option of doing an HND instead at Oxford Polytechnic.
Yeah.
So I took that, thinking it was kind of a second-rate choice rather than wanting to do a degree. But in actual fact, it was probably the making of my engineering career for several reasons. Firstly, it was really a relearning of the academic stuff that I had done at A-level, but now put in context of engineering rather than pure maths. It was maths to solve problems. The problems that I knew I wanted to be able to solve, spring rates and sort of forces and all those sort of things. So that made a lot of sense. Did very, very well in my HND, which then got me into the second year of degree course at what had now become Oxford Brookes University. So I got my HND from Oxford Poly, and then I went on to do a BEng honours, a mechanical engineering degree at Oxford Brookes.
Okay. And then let's talk first job. I know there's a story here. Talk us through, you coming out of university, maybe before we get into that story, you were kind of looking at every discipline. You weren't at that point, I'm going into... It
wasn't clear to me.
Yeah,
it wasn't clear, and I think that's the same for a lot of people. I think you're very lucky actually if it's very clear to you where your objective and what you're aiming for from a younger age. And certainly as an individual now, I try to impart that on young people that we meet and try and help them with identifying where their career choices might be. But so I mentioned that it was coincidental or lucky for me that I did the HND, and one of the reasons that was lucky is that it forced me into a 4-year training at university instead of 3 years.
Yeah.
As a result of that 4 years, the year that I graduated, there was a gentleman called Adrian Reynard who was guest of honour on the day that I graduated in engineering, and I hadn't heard of him before, but I was a big fan of motorsport and cars. I mean, that was my passion, I guess, in terms of watching stuff on TV, British touring cars, Formula One. That was my passion, and then all the cars, reading all the car magazines. So when this guy jumped up on stage and sort of gave us a briefing before our graduation, told us all about his car company, Reynard Motorsport, where he built Formula 3000 cars and Formula 3 cars, which you didn't see those on TV. You had to go to the circuits to see them. It sounded like a really cool place to work. What he described sounded like a really good place to be an engineer. So when I went up to get my certificate, I asked him for a job. So if I hadn't done the 4 years, I wouldn't have met him. If I hadn't done the 4 years, I don't think I would have been as well prepared as an engineer either. But that's how I ended up in motorsport. It was a bit by accident, a lot by chance, a lot by being ballsy and asking the right questions. But at the same time, so graduation happened sort of in October, I guess it was, and obviously I actually left university in June at the end of the year. In that middle period of time, I'd applied to every engineering company there was, from oil and gas to automotive. Hadn't applied for any motorsport companies. Nobody had made it clear to me there were careers possibly in a subject that you loved. I mean, whether it's motorsport or sport or TV or music, you may not actually get there as the artist, but there are thousands of jobs around the back office of all of those things that we perhaps all have some interest in.
Yeah, absolutely. I think from listening to you there, it's taking that opportunity and being always proactive to not just apply for a job or not just do your course. It's that little step further that sets people apart.
I think it's easy to say, isn't it, when you're sitting here perhaps in what people might think as the dream job, and you perhaps go to work every day and enjoy something you do, but it really is important to start by trying to identify a career where you think you'll be happy going to work every day, and then finding a job within that profession. And that gives you the proactivity. If you're just applying for a job for the sake of having a job, then it's going to be difficult, I think, in certain industries. But I have to respect also there are some people where job is a very small part of their life, and it's to earn some money to go and do the other things in their life they want to do. I consider myself to be fortunate that actually, what I do is what I would do if I probably would do if I wasn't being paid to do it. There are lots of jobs like that, but I think sometimes a bit of luck, but certainly a lot of man-made luck that gets you there.